What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our SEC football channel. Texas A&M had one of the toughest schedules in the country in 2019, and because of that, this team finished 7-5. But I think this was a team that was better than their record actually showed. You look at their schedule, and they had 5 really tough games, 5 games against really good teams. They lost all those games. They weren't really super competitive in any of those games. You know, Georgia turned out to be a one-possession game, but for the most part, they were, I wouldn't say blown out, but they clearly were not as good as those teams that they played. And then against the lesser competition, for the most part, they took care of business and won those games pretty easily. There were a couple of close games in there, but yeah, the schedule was really tough. And you look at 2020, the schedule gets a little bit better for Texas A&M, and here is that schedule. They open up the season. Nope, no Clemson this year for Texas A&M. Of course, last year they had to play the SEC West. They had to play Georgia out of the East, and then play Clemson as well. That's why that schedule was so tough. But instead, they open up the year. They open up season this year, September 5th against Abilene Christian. So that should be an easy victory for the Aggies. They should open up the season, with a big win there. And then against North Texas, week 2, September 12th. Should also be an easy win for the Aggies. So no reason they should not start the season off 2-0. And then it's an interesting game against Colorado. This is their toughest non-conference test this year. Again, big difference between Clemson and Colorado. They'll play on September 19th. It'll be a home game for Texas A&M. Colorado's a team that is clearly should not be all that competitive in this game. But you never know. I mean, look at Nebraska and Colorado the last couple of years. We thought Nebraska was going to win those games, and Colorado wound up pulling it out. Now, Nebraska is not Texas A&M. So, again, Aggies should be able to take care of business, win those first 3 games. Then they play Arkansas. Who knows what we're going to get out of Arkansas? They've played Texas A&M really tough the last couple of years. So I wouldn't say that that's a guaranteed win for Texas A&M, but a game that they should be favored, and they should be the better team, should be the more talented team. Again, we don't know for sure what Arkansas is going to look like, but that's an interesting game to start off SEC play. Then they play on the road at Mississippi State. Of course, Mike Leach taking over there. What will this Bulldogs offense look like? That's a big question. Some teams in the SEC, and especially in the West with Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss, that we really don't know what they're going to look like next year. I mean, we have an idea based off of the personnel, based off of the new coaching staffs, but you never know until you put it all together and see these teams on the field. So that could be a tricky game. The Cowbells will be going there on October the 3rd, so keep that in mind as Texas A&M goes on the road to face Mississippi State. Then they play Fresno State on October 10th. A couple of years ago, I would say that this would have been a pretty difficult game for Texas A&M. Not a game that they should not win, but a game that might be a little bit close. Fresno State did not have a good year last year, so the Aggies might be able to take care of business and win that one pretty easily. Then it's a back-to-back road games after that. Auburn and South Carolina both on the road, back-to-back. That is going to be a very difficult stretch there. Auburn going to be probably pretty good offensively next year. I know they lost a lot defensively, but still, that is going to be a challenge, tough place to play. South Carolina also a tough place to play. They had a down year, had a bad year last year, but I think they have a pretty talented roster overall, and if some of those young guys can grow up a little bit, that could be a challenge. And then you have Ole Miss, a game against Lane Kiffin, another team like we just talked about. We don't know for sure what we're going to get. So the schedule's not, it doesn't jump out at you. You're not saying, wow, they play a bunch of top 10 teams. But if they don't bring their A game, there are some games that they could trip up on in this schedule. I mean, I really feel like that could happen if they play their A game, if they play as they're capable of, and I think it's going to be a really good Texas A&M team. They should be able to win these games, almost all of them. So it's going to be really interesting to see if they're able to bring that A game and play at that top level throughout the season. They play Vanderbilt on November 14th. Again, a game they should be able to win. The toughest part of the schedule for Texas A&M has to be the last 2 games. Now, Auburn on the road, I think, is going to be really tough. And again, there are some games that could trip them up. Mississippi State on the road, South Carolina on the road. Texas A&M might actually be better than Auburn next year. I know Auburn beat them last year at Texas A&M, But they lost a lot on defense. Texas A&M brings a lot back. They might be the better team there. I think it's going to be close. I think that's a swing game, really, for both teams, potentially. But let's say A&M does win that game, and then you come down to these final 2 games on the road at Alabama and LSU. They're going to have to win one of those 2 games if they're going to have a chance to reach their goals this season. And I don't even know which game is, the tougher game. Probably going to be Alabama on the road because, for one, it's on the road. But they've had a hard time beating LSU as well since they've come into the SEC. So both of those games I think could be really challenging. November 21st at Alabama, and then November 28th with LSU at home. LSU lost a ton of talent. They lost a couple of big-time coaches. This is a team that you could almost put in that same conversation with Arkansas, Mississippi State, Ole Miss in the SEC West. We don't know for sure what we're going to get out of LSU. Are they going to be a playoff contender once again? Are they going to take a big step back? We don't know. But the good news for A&M is they get that game at home. And you look through this schedule, let's say they lose to Alabama in a close game and they beat everyone else. Could this Texas A&M team sneak into the college football playoff at 11-1 and not even play in the SEC championship if Alabama does go on to that game? I think what's going to hurt them is this non-conference schedule. Again, Colorado and Fresno State, their 2 toughest challenges there, but they do have to go through the SEC. Even though out of the East, it's not that tough of a draw with South Carolina and Vanderbilt. They don't have to play Florida. They don't have to play Georgia. So all in all, this is a very favorable schedule for Texas A&M, which could be a good thing, but at the same time, it could be a bad thing if that strength of schedule ultimately does keep them out of the college football playoff. Thank you for watching this video. If you're an SEC football fan, please subscribe to the channel. Leave us your thoughts down in the comments below. And for the latest in SEC football, keep it right here.